the disciples reconvened with Jesus and report on the great work that they had done. And Jesus knows that ministry is a draining process. We saw this last week when Jesus was touched by the bleeding woman, and we're told power went out from him. Jesus knew that these disciples need to be refueled. They need to find some quiet rest with God. And so they set sail to seek out a remote place where they can retreat, where they can regroup. But it is not to be. Someone somewhere knew about their plans, and when Jesus and the disciples reach their destination, a huge crowd is already there. And again, we see Jesus interrupted, his plans foiled, his time alone completely disrespected in this case, and his response to the mewing masses is compassion. Right? He is compassionate toward them. Verse 34 says he sees them as a shepherd. He sees them as sheep without a shepherd, helpless. And they needed his help. And so as tired as he is, and as derailed as his day has been, Jesus begins to teach them. And soon enough, it became apparent that dinner time was coming and that there were no food trucks booked for the event. And the disciples conclude, we'd better send these people away so they can eat. But Jesus has other plans. And they manage to scrounge up 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And Jesus divides the people into groups, just like the good shepherd of Psalm 23. He lies them down in the green pasture. Now, most Bible translations say that Jesus had the people sit down in the grass. But I love how the CEB puts it here. It says, he directed the disciples to seat all the people in groups as though they were having a banquet on the green grass. And that's interesting. It's a wonderful way of putting it, because the Greek word used here, usually we translate to sit, but it actually means to recline, which is how people would sit at a banquet at that time. They would recline at the table. And so in fact, Mark used the very same word in verse 26 when he was writing about the great banquet that Herod hosted. The people there reclined at the table. And so here we see Jesus is about to do the same. The same word used to describe Herod's banquet, the guests there, is used to describe this helpless crowd who has no food. Jesus raises up the bread, he gives thanks, he breaks it, and the disciples distribute it all out to the people until everyone, all 5,000 people, had eaten their fill. With, of course, leftovers. 12 baskets left over to boot. Right? A banquet indeed. Jesus was hosting a banquet.